Well, hi again, everyone, and welcome into UnAnchored Boston with Bob Lobel. I'm Mike Lynch, and here we come down to the last couple of days in the month of September, and the leaves will turn and the calendar will turn. We'll be in October soon. And as always, we are brought to you by Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping. And where? We're in New Hampshire, of course, and by the great George Gray, the big wheel at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. Well, back with us for a great guest. I couldn't think of a better guy to have at this stage of the season or any stage of the season. Great former Patriots linebacker Ted Johnson. And as always, Bob Lobel handles the formal introductions. You better be good, Bob, because Ted is going to be paying real attention to how you introduce him.
Well, he's certainly one of my favorite guests of all times, and we go back a long way. And uh, he was there in the original Super Bowl. He's won 3 Super Bowls. He was in New Orleans when they accused the Patriots of the video gate, and he was he was there during just about everything.
I was there with you, Lobie, when we won our first one in '01, and you almost didn't know what to ask me because you couldn't believe what you had just witnessed, and it was a great moment. We had you interviewing me on the field after that '01 Super Bowl, where it was just we just neither of us could believe what just took place.
You know what? I still don't believe it, and it's been that long since, and I'll never forget that whole session. Alice Cook went to get Belichick to bring him over to the interview, and then Belichick asked her who's doing the interview. As typical, it was Burton, me, or Alice. Who's doing the interview? And Alice said, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." So she brought him over. So she ended up doing the interview because she didn't want to talk to us.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, no, I thought you'd say that'd be typical, right?
That's pretty much what par for the course right there, no doubt.
Well, it was a great moment, not only for us but for all the fans. It turns out there are a lot of people watching that show after people that turned off the game. It was just truly unbelievable.
I'm sure you were a big star before that.
Oh yeah, right.
But I'm sure that your Q rating went up after that one. That was pretty cool to be a part of.
All the tide rises all boats, and everybody was rising with that tide. I'll tell you that.
No doubt. It's low tide right now with the Patriots, though. Right now, it's low tide.
Well, you know what? And this is my introduction, Mike, about Ted Johnson.
It's only 7 or 8 minutes long, Bob.
I know. Well, you said it had to be good, so I'm trying to make it as good as possible. And I love how outspoken Ted is, but how on the money he is. He's never shied away from telling the truth. Sometimes the truth is hard to get to, especially around the NFL, where it's clouded with all kinds of different things. So that kind of is my ultimate compliment in the introduction. Okay, Mike, I'll wrap it up now. You can take the first question because I got plenty too.
All right, so Ted, will the real Patriots team please stand up? The team in Cincinnati, a team that went to overtime and almost beat an unbeaten team in Seattle, or the team that really crapped the bed and got their lunch handed to them against the Jets. Which one is the real Patriots team?
Yeah, it's Mike. That's a great question. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I just can't imagine that. Look, we know the Bengals aren't maybe as good as we thought, but still, that was a solid win from this Patriots team week 1 to go to Cincinnati and win that game. And I think Seattle's proven to be a pretty good team, man. Their defense is fierce. Their offense, believe it or not, with Geno Smith, I mean, they got a really good offense. So maybe no shame in letting that game slip away, although they really should have won that game. And so I don't think they're as bad as the way they played against the Jets. However, that loss will have an impact, a psychological impact moving forward. There's kind of some PTSD right now, maybe, for those guys, and they're going to have a hard time this week trying to figure out which team do they want to be because they got exposed. Let's face it, really the offensive line, we know, has always been an issue for this team all season long. But I think the defense really got kind of embarrassed and stung in that game against the Jets. And I think Seattle, to some degree, broke the code for that Patriots defense. And so I see more teams kind of maybe doing what Seattle did, the blueprint, and stopping that Patriots defense. So they're going to have to figure some things out on defense. We know they're going to lean on their defense in the running game. And their defense, I think, was a little bit exposed in the last couple games. And so they're going to have to figure out how to combat what teams are doing to them in these last 2 weeks. If they're going to be, at least the team we all thought they would be, which was, look, I think we all thought after the first 2 games is we can expect a highly competitive, tough, disciplined, team. And maybe they lack talent, but at least those things are going to show up. Well, heck, those didn't even show up on Thursday, which was really surprising. So I can't imagine that's the team that we got moving forward. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle of these 3 performances. I just don't think they're as bad as what they played against the Jets.
How important in a short week that they had going into that Jets game is the coaching factor.
Mm-hmm.
The coaching factor in a short week, it seems to me, would be exponentially more important than in a regular situation.
Absolutely, Bob. And you know what? And I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of one play to maybe kind of encapsulate what you're saying. And so you look at the Jets. A lot of people think the Jets coaching staff is terrible, and Hackett and Saleh, like they don't know what they're doing, and that might be true. You look at their track record there; it's not good. However, they have a system, and they've been together for a while. And Aaron Rodgers has been working with his offensive coordinator Hackett for a long time. And there was one play in particular, the first touchdown that the Jets had, if you remember, was that quick pass to Alan Lazard out into the flat where he beat Alex Austin for a touchdown. Okay, it was that right there. Alan Lazard has been in the league 7 years. All right, 5 years with Green Bay Packers, and now 2 years with the New York Jets. So he's played his entire career with Aaron Rodgers. And so he knew what Aaron knew when he saw that soft coverage from Alex Austin leaning way back, staying way back. And so they communicated. Somehow they communicated with each other. It's like, hey, I'm going to abandon. I got a called run here to the right. I'm going to abandon that because I see that soft coverage over there, and I'm just going to throw it to you quick, and you're going to make your move, and you're going to go score. That is an example of what a consistent coaching staff, some consistency with the players, knowledge that the players have with each other, that on a short week like you had can benefit you. Where a team like the Patriots, Alex Austin, are you kidding me? We didn't think he was going to play at all this year, and he's out there covering Alan Lazard in a big game week 3 on a short week. And so that's where it really showed is on a play like that is where at least the team that had continuity, the Jets, they've been those two, the quarterback and that receiver, have been playing their 7 years together. That offensive coordinator and Aaron Rodgers have been together for many, many years. And so that benefited the Jets in this game. And so the coaching advantage on a short week clearly, was in the advantage of the New York Jets.
Good point.
Ted, how does a short week work? Usually the day after the game is treatment, et cetera. Then you have a day off on Tuesday. Then you work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you got Monday is at the treatment day, and you practice on Tuesday. Wednesday is usually a walkthrough, and you're flying out. You get 1 day of practice. Is that really how it works?
Yep, pretty much. So, Monday you come in, you probably don't even watch the film from the week before. My guess is they didn't even bother watching maybe the Seattle game, maybe some of the highlights. They got right into game planning for the Jets on Monday. You come in, you get your treatment, you do a light workout, you get stretched, you do some lifting, and that's it. And then Tuesday. Do they have Tuesday off? No, they did. I don't think they get Tuesday off, right? They get no, they don't. So they come in Tuesday. It's more installment, but very much kind of a lighter practice, if you will. And just like you said, Mike, Wednesday is a walkthrough. And I think what was surprising to me about the effort from the Patriots was what was the most alarming to me was they had 13 missed tackles. They had, which is more than they had in the first two games combined. They had the Jets had almost 250 yards after contact, either in the running game and in the passing game combined. After the player was hit, they extended the play for a total of 250 yards throughout that game. And so the tackling was horrendous and it was terrible. And that was a little bit surprising to me because Gerard Mayo ran a really tough training camp, very physical. And I think a lot of people credited the physical kind of training camp that they had as being a reason that they got off to such a good start in the first two games. But wow, it sure as heck didn't show up in that Jets game. And part of it is mindset. I think the Jets just went into that game and they weren't going to be denied. And I don't know if the Patriots just collectively were focused and ready to go. And then part of it is you're going in on a short week and you already have a crappy offensive line. Oh, and guess what? Two of the crappy offensive linemen that were starting the first 2 weeks, they're hurt. So you got to put two more unknowns out there. And so really, maybe they just went in not feeling as confident as they did the first two games because personnel issues were certainly a problem in that game.
Well, you mentioned Gerard Mayo, and I'm sorry. You mentioned Gerard Mayo, and this is no knock on him any way, shape, or form. But when he was hired, I thought that they should have. I thought they should have hired Vrabel as opposed to Vrabel was. But that's what do I know? Kraft said he picked Mayo 5 years ago. I mean I thought that was typical Kraft.
Yes. You want to finish the thought, or you want me to finish it for you?
I want you to finish it for me.
Typical Kraft, meaning I think he fell in love, and he fell in love with Gerard. Gerard, if you've ever talked to him, he has a way with words. He's his interpersonal skills are on another level. He has a way of making you feel, like he really cares about what you have to say. I mean, that's a rarity in today's world. So you always leave with a really good impression of Gerard Mayo when you talk to him. And my guess is that's, Robert Kraft. I was recently told to call him RKK. I don't know. That means maybe we're on better terms right now. So it's RKK. I think he probably fell in love with the idea of Gerard. Gerard, he can be an impressive guy. He's a very knowledgeable guy. Like I said, his interpersonal skills are on another level. And my guess is RKK fell in love with him a long time ago. And so that was it was a fait accompli for a while that he was going to be the next head coach.
Do you think RKK felt he would have more control over Gerard than he would Mike Vrabel?
What a great point, Mike.
Yes, I do. And I think that's part of the reason he was probably hired. I think, and that's the fascinating thing is if you look at the last 20 years, and I did an interview earlier this summer, and someone asked me the question, what happened to Bill Belichick after you won the first Super Bowl in 01? Like, what did it feel like right after that first Super Bowl that you won in 01? What happened? What did it feel like in 02? And I said it was easy. It felt like Bill all of a sudden had all the power. He went from just being the head coach to the overlord of the New England Patriots. When it came to contracts, when it came to personnel decisions, when it came to, all the little things that you think other people would handle. Oh, no, no, no. That was all Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick just got so much power after winning the first Super Bowl, and then it just grew from there. You win another one and another one. So much power Bill Belichick, one man, had for the last 24 years. And my guess is in the Crafts were shut out from that. We all know the relationship that Robert and Jonathan had with Bill was not a good one, and that Bill shut him out, iced him out, and probably didn't share a lot of his thoughts with them. And so that knowing their personalities, that didn't sit well with them. And so a guy like Gerard was going to be a guy that they knew that they could. If you want to say control, okay, that's probably a fair word to use. But at least they knew that they could collaborate and have a partnership with Gerard more so than they could the old guy that was here.
Well, that was a great point, Mike. Great question and a great answer, Ted. You've had no stranger to concussive issues through your career. So I have to ask you about the Miami quarterback situation. And I know you've been asked this before. I saw you on it was NBC TV or whatever.
Yep.
It was a great answer, but I think I'd like to have you repeat it about what would you advise Tua to do after 3 concussions of the kind that he's had, and what do you think his chances of coming back are realistically if he decides to do that?
Yeah, Lobie. Look, so obviously this is something I'm very, very passionate about, and I appreciate you asking the question because I always look for opportunities to talk about this and hopefully shed some light on things and help people become more educated when it comes to concussion awareness and the problems that come with it. And so, look, I was asked the question, what would you advise Tua at this point to do? And I've said that I feel uncomfortable kind of telling anybody what they should do. But where I stand from my vantage point, from my experience, if I had to take a side, I would advise him to not play anymore. And part of it is because, look, football. My guess is, he's playing football to create wealth and to make money and to create a legacy and to feel like he's accomplished something, and he has, and he just got paid a crap ton of money, right? And so he never has to work another day in his life if he retired right now. And that's the biggest reason I tell him to retire is, look, you're from a financial standpoint, you're not going to have to go work at McDonald's, okay, dude? You've already made a lot of money. You just got signed a big contract, and so I would advise him not to play, but to take it further. And so it's not all about the money. I get that, but that's a big part of it. Is like you have financial security right now if you didn't play another snap. So what I would say is you look at the 4 concussions that we know of that have been reported, and trust me, we only know the reported concussions, okay? There's more that have happened that we don't know about. 3 of the 4 were of the kind that I've always said every concussion is not created equal, but 3 of the 4 were the kind of where, just like Lobie, you said, he was in that fencing position where it's the brain's reaction to a neurological trauma to the brain when your fingers kind of just tighten up like this, and you have that kind of that clenched fist that lasts for several seconds. And the more you get those, the longer that tension lasts. And that's where the long-term damage comes, okay? There's no guarantee that he's going to have a life like I had after football. But the odds would say the more that happens, the more opportunities you have to perhaps all of a sudden start developing behavioral issues, that being personality changes, that being sleep issues, that being anxiety, depression, impulse control, irritability. All of those are symptoms of head trauma and multiple head trauma. And so, what did I do? And what do a lot of guys do when they are dealing with these symptoms? They seek out drugs, alcohol, ways to medicate, ways to feel better. And that's what happened to me. I'm not saying everybody's going to go down that same path, but my head was hurting. Cognitively, I wasn't firing on all cylinders. I just knew my personality was changing, and I was seeking relief, and I found it through the just by chance. Um, through somebody who said alerted me to a medication, a prescribed medication for ADD, and that was Adderall. And he says, and this is a guy that I trained with my whole life and a good friend of mine. And he said, my baseball players take it to help them focus when they have to go in and pitch, right? Relief pitchers. And so why don't you try it? And that was a long time ago. That was 20 years ago. And I took that pill and everything changed for me. And all of a sudden I went from feeling just from feeling, the brain fog, the lethargy, just feeling despondent, not having cognitively, not feeling good at all. To all right, I'm alert. My brain is active. I'm cognitively back in the game, if you will. The problem was that led to a 20-year drug addiction, and you go from Adderall to the next thing to the next thing, and then when you've gone to enough doctors and you've basically you used up all the doctors you can to get the medication that you just can't get enough of, because if you take one, you need two to get the same feeling, and next time you got to take four, and next time you got to take eight, and so it's just a never-ending process. What I turned to was the street drug equivalent of cocaine, and so then I had a long issue battle with cocaine. I'm not saying that's going to be his journey. I'm just saying that is a possibility that could be in front of him. You just think of all the frontal lobe, this part of your brain, and this is where most guys with the helmet use the butt of their forehead as their weapon, and that's where they get hit. The frontal lobe of your brain, this part of your brain, is responsible for your decision making. It's responsible for the mood you're in. It's a very important part of your brain, and when that gets damaged, you change. Your personality changes. And so I would just, and the more you get, the more you accumulate, the more possibility you have of having long-term cognitive and behavioral issues down the road. And so for me, knowing what I know now, it's not worth it. But I will say this, and I'll finish up with this. Um, the thing that Tua has that I did not have is he has all the information. He is making an informed decision. Players can make informed decisions now, like we couldn't before when we didn't have the information. So he has all the information in front of him, and it's really up to him to decide what he wants to do. But if it were me, I would say shut it down. It's not worth it. You've already made enough money. You got nothing else to prove, and I don't think it's worth it, because the brain is obviously a very important part of your daily functioning for the rest of your life.
Ted, your story is absolutely fascinating to listen to. And I know there are a lot of college kids and high school kids and parents that would like to know, how did you eventually get out of that black hole?
Well, a lot of different treatment centers and a lot of going through a lot of different doctors. And Mike, I started having my problems right around 2002. I retired the first day of training camp of 2005. And then I really started researching it and going to doctors and trying to find answers. And I'll give you an example of where I was at the time. In 2005, you have to understand that CTE, brain disease linked to multiple concussions, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, was not even discovered until 2006. And so really the outside world, I mean, there were there were neurologists and there were researchers that knew about post-concussion syndrome and multiple hits to the head and what the problems were. It just wasn't a mainstream topic. And so a lot of doctors didn't know what to do with me. And so I go to the best psychologist, at McLean's and have them look at me. And it was unbelievable. So I'll give you an example. I had a doctor who was the best at what he did in psychology. And he says, Ted, I don't know what to do with you. We've reached, it's kind of we're at a point where I really don't know what to do. So I'm going to suggest ECT treatment for you. And I said, what is that? He goes, that's electric shock therapy. He goes, why don't you take a tour of the facility? He goes, it's 80% success rate. You go there 4 days a week. Someone's got to drive you. They put these electrodes to your brain and they shock your brain. And I was like, okay, that's. I saw that in the movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That doesn't really get me excited. So I called a friend of mine, Chris Nowinski, who's kind of been authority on a lot of this stuff. And I said, Chris, I got a doctor who's recommending ECT. What do you think? He goes, Ted, please do me a favor. Talk to this doctor, who's a neurosurgeon at Emerson, who was kind of a leading doctor in the field of this concussion research. And I went to this other doctor, who's the best at what he does. And he says to me, Ted, if you get electric shock therapy, that's like getting concussed over and over and over and over again. It'd be the worst thing you could ever do. So the point I'm trying to make is in 2005, when I retired and I'm looking for answers, I got one expert in his field saying doing this and the other expert saying that'd be the worst thing. And so I had to figure out and navigate my way for a long time and until I found what worked. Well, so what I had to do was I had to identify what my symptoms were. Was it sleep? Was it anxiety? Was it depression? Impulse issues? Okay. First off, I had to get clean and sober. You have to get off the drugs. That was first. And then once you do that, then you identify the problems and then you treat those. You can treat those through pharmaceutical means, or you can treat those through other therapeutic methods as well. And I did both of those. And so for 20 years, I just tried to find what the right answer was for me and what works for me. And I finally have kind of figured it out. And what I have learned is that I have anxiety issues. I have impulse issues. I have depression at times. I treat those with meds. The depression has been lifted here recently, which is great. I have sleep issues, and I treat those with some pharmaceutical, means. And then there's other things I do too. I work out as much as I can, 5 days a week. I engage in a job where it makes me think. If I just sit on the couch and live a sedentary life, that is not good for somebody with a brain injury. You got to work your brain. I do radio and TV. I'm doing a podcast with you guys. My brain is working. I'm forcing myself to exercise my brain, and that's been the best kind of way for me to overcome the history of concussions. Is to constantly live a diligent life, get good sleep, eat good diet, good and good exercise, and that is to me what has helped get me to where I am today.
Let me ask you this: has the National Football League lent you any assistance at all?
No, Mike. No, the
NFL. Why not?
You know what they'll offer? They will offer, if I want to go get my brain scanned, they'll offer free testing. I've done all the tests though. I mean, I've lived in an MRI machine longer than I need to. I've gotten PEC scans, SPEC scans. They've done every test to me. I've gone, so I've done all that. And so they offer all that. Okay, I know all that. What about, where do you go from there? How about insurance? How about paying for the medications that it's going to take now to kind of keep me up and running? That would be good, but we all know that you don't get lifetime insurance, even if you're a vested player, like I was. That doesn't happen in football. So it's kind of like they show that they're doing things. If guys want to go get tested, fine. Okay, so once you get tested and you find out that you have cognitive deficiencies or that you might have stage 2 CTE or something, then what? They don't help you after that. They just help you get to figure out what it is you have, but then that's where the help stops. And I think really that's where the help should begin, in my opinion.
I have, you know, I don't know whether to do my commercial first or ask the next couple questions I have, because the next couple questions I have are pretty power packed with potential answers. Let me do the commercial first and put you in the travel trailer once again. And then I'll come back. I'm not going to forget what I was going to ask you because
I'm here waiting for you, bud.
I'm going to bet you forget one of the two questions.
What's that?
I'm going to bet you forget one of the two questions.
You know what? All right. I haven't written down, Mike. That's why I don't try not to forget. I know what I don't know. It's important to know what you don't know.
That's right.
All right. Are you ready to see what's new in 2025 at Cold Springs RV? They have next year models and they are arriving every day. Check out the latest in pop-up travel trailers, fifth wheelers, and motorhomes, and tell them Moby and Lynch sent you. And at Cold Springs RV, the doors are always open, and you can freely browse. If you want to see the latest in camping, get the Cold Springs RV in Ware, New Hampshire, which is west of Goffstown, north of Tingsboro, your destination for all things camping. I knew a guy that had a travel trailer in Raymond, New Hampshire, and a woman that had a motorhome right next to his in New Hampshire, and they really became happy campers until something bad happened. And one morning, her motorhome wasn't there anymore, and she just hit the road, Jack. That's the way that went. So anyway, see, you can get in and you can get out in a hurry. It's one of the great things about relationships if you're in a camper or whatever. Learn more online at coldspringsrv.com. That's coldspringsrv.com. And Mike, your question for Ted, and I won't forget my other questions, believe me.
I'm betting you're going to forget one of them. All right.
All right. You're going to bet. You don't know.
All right. So we've been through this before, Ted. We'll throw a little twist into it. We're going to they finally built this Moby Lynch cruiser, even 10 times better than the Madden cruiser. We get to give it to you for a week. We get to drive from here all the way to California, and we'll fly it back. We won't really. We're just pretending we will. Okay. And but you have to bring somebody to ride shotgun with you. And the condition this time is that you have to pick somebody that you have played against or who coached against you in your career to ride shotgun and have a conversation with that person all the way across the country, 5 or 6 days. Who would it be?
Great question. Man. Okay. So, I mean, the first guy that comes to mind, but doesn't fit your criteria, can I just tell you, it'd be Bill Parcells. Even though Parcells only coached me for 2 years, he coached me. He didn't coach against me, I guess, when he went to the Jets.
Yeah. All right, let's go with him and tell us why.
Technically, you know, I find him to be the most fascinating coach I've ever been around. I loved his style. I loved his stories. I loved that he cared about his players. Now he didn't maybe care about all his players, but if you were his guy, and I was, then he cared about you. And you know what? That would be the funnest ride ever. I mean, I can't imagine a better ride to go across country with than Bill Parcells, because his opinions are incredible. He's seen it all. He knows it all. But you know what? He's comes off as gruff and tough, but underneath he's this doughy, soft, good-hearted person. And so that's the guy that I would go with. And you know what? He only coached me for 2 years, but I learned so much from him in those 2 years. And you know what's cool, guys, is I played 10 years, and for one team, and I had 3 different coaches in those 10 years. And how many guys can say that they had 3 different coaches and all three of them have completely different leadership styles, and all three of them will be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. One already is, and Bill Parcells. I think Pete Carroll will be eventually, and then we know Belichick will be. So I had a very unique experience that way, but for me, it's the easy choice is Bill Parcells.
Great answer. I can understand that. That would be a great one.
Let me ask this: have you ever met anyone with more superstitions than Bill Parcells?
You know what? Did he have a lot? See, I mean, I only played for him for a couple of years, and I'm trying to remember what they were.
You said the elephant in his office with the trunks down or the trunks up, and if he backed out of his driveway and he saw like a black cat, he had to drive back in the driveway and then back out again and just reverse the procedure. He was a nutcase on superstitions.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, I didn't realize that. That was new to me. I didn't realize that he was like that. But
he is the antithesis of Belichick. Talk about he is the antithesis of Belichick.
Yeah. Right. If you were to say, who's the last guy you want to go on a road trip across the country with? I'd probably say, I'd learn a lot about football, but I don't know how much fun it'd be. It'd be Bill Belichick, But and you know what? I don't know what it is. It's with Parcells is he just had a way with what I like in a coach, because I think such an important part of coaching is motivating. You really got the two qualities to me that make a great coach. You very rarely can you have just one and not the other. Is first off, you got to be a great motivator, and then secondly, you got to be a good tactician. And I have a high football acumen. And Parcells was the absolute best motivator. He could look at Mike Lynch, and he knew exactly what he needed to say to Mike, and he knew what would get Lobel fired up. He knew what he had to say to Lobel to get him to go out and do his best work on TV. And so he knew what got the best out of me, and so I loved him for it. He's so in his own category, and it's too bad he didn't have more success, because I think he's a phenomenal coach. If he had a quarterback like Tom Brady, I think he would have won as many Super Bowls as Bill Belichick. So that's my opinion.
I think you're that wrong. Football coaches are figures, first and foremost, at almost any level. Not so much at the pro level, but certainly at the school and college level. Football coaches have that kind of influence on the player.
Yes, especially at the lower levels, no doubt. They, because I always say this, a lot of football players, don't come from Ozzie and Harriet backgrounds. I came from an abusive home life, a single parent. I ran away from home when I was in high school. A lot of people don't know my story, but I had a mom that was very abusive, and football became my family. My coaches became pseudo fathers. My teammates became pseudo brothers, and so like a lot of football's hard, physically, mentally, and it's you got to show up every day, and you got to be mean, and you got to be ready to hit, and you got to be in that mindset every single day. And it takes a certain profile of person to play this game at a high level. And most guys that play at the highest levels didn't come from like easy, soft, lovey-dovey homes. They came from dysfunction and abuse and neglect. And so Parcells always recognized that. And I think that was what made him such a good coach. But guys, are drawn to football because of the influence that these coaches can have, not only on their football, but on them as human beings, no doubt.
Which brings me to one of the questions I was going to ask you, okay? Well, they're both intertwined. As a sport, I mean, you talked about CTE and dealing with all brain issues and all the issues that might come up later in life. And I'm saying, well, why are we even playing football? And football meant an awful lot to me in my life. So I'd say, It was the best thing I ever did was to play football in high school. It was the best thing that ever occurred to me. And you might say the same thing, and Lynch might say the same thing. But in the long run, have to ask yourself, if it's so damaging to so many people, why are we even playing it? I'm just going there. That's number one. Number two is, I don't know if you saw any of the Aaron Hernandez stuff. You have to take a look at this, Ted. You have to watch the Aaron Hernandez stuff on Netflix or whatever it is. The first 2 episodes have dropped, and maybe a third one this week.
Okay.
Pretty unbelievable. I can't remember if you were around. I don't think you were when he came.
Nope.
I think you were gone by the time he came.
I was.
But I just sort of, because of his abusive parents, because of the situation he grew up in, because of the concussions that he had, it was a tragic story. Not the fact that he killed somebody, but on the other hand, he was. I don't know, Mike. Have you seen any of it?
I like when you say dropped, Bob. That was kind of cool.
I said,
So
what?
2 episodes that dropped.
Oh yeah, I guess. Just saying.
I have not seen them yet, but
Oh my God! Then I should. I'm not preaching to the choir. The guys have to watch this because it's much more. I know what I went in thinking about this guy, that he was really a punk, and he was really he was a victim. He wasn't a punk. He was a victim. He had no control over anything that he did, but because he had so many issues going on. So I guess if you haven't seen it, then that takes one of the questions off the board.
Well, I'll say this real quick, and remember your next question. I would just say, believe it or not, his story isn't that surprising to me. There's a lot of guys that probably had similar upbringings, but don't turn into murderers, right? They turn into drug addicts, or they can, or they're abusive, without going to that level. But there's a lot of guys that come from really, really bad upbringings that play. Aaron went to another level. His
and
yep.
It's sad. I mean, it's sad for everybody. There's no happy endings in this story. No way. No, whether it's Odin Lloyd, who was the guy that got shot, maybe one of 2 or 3 that Hernandez killed, but he still has a daughter, and he still has, things that, and life goes on. Anyway, I'll get off of that topic because I really recommend that you just spend some time and watch it.
When is the 3rd episode drop, Bob?
Mike, it might be tomorrow, Mike. You know what? It might be tomorrow.
Hey, can I give you guys? I don't know if I know we're on probably a time limit here.
Don't worry about it. We're in charge.
Okay, I'm in charge. Okay, I'm gonna take over here. So people ask me about Aaron Hernandez, and he was after my time, and never met the guy, but I've heard stories, okay, and I've heard how he was in the locker room, and I found that piece to be interesting. And what I was told was that Aaron was the kind of guy that when practice was over, he was out of the building. He didn't hang out with his teammates. He didn't socialize with his teammates. Not a lot of interaction. It was kind of, he came in, he did his job, and he left, right? That's not typical behavior for a football player. Guys, families get together, wives all hang out. It's more of a communal kind of feeling typically, not with everybody. I mean, because you got guys that are, a lot older than other guys, but for the most part, you find your tribe within the tribe and you hang out with them. But that's not what Aaron Hernandez did. And it reminded me of a player that I played with back in college, who had similar attributes and characteristics to Aaron Hernandez, who did something very similar, and that was Ray Caruth. Ray Caruth was a wide receiver, a younger wide receiver I played with at University of Colorado, who hired two men to kill his baby mama, and it worked. She was She was shot dead in her car. The baby survived, and Ray Caruth's son was born. And after Ray Caruth got out of jail, they have now formed a relationship. The point is, the one kind of thing that matches the two psychologies for me of those two players, even though I didn't play with Aaron, I did play with Ray, is that Ray didn't spend much time with his teammates, and he was so anytime that would be a red flag. If I'm a coach and I see a player who is disengaged from his teammates, isolates, doesn't engage really in team activities off the field, I don't know. That would be a red flag for me, and that was something that those two guys shared in common. It sounds like.
Well, that's something that came up in the Dynasty series about Aaron Hernandez. But the guy was such a productive player on the field. The coaches just these things. I don't see that. I don't see that thing that's happening over here, because as long as he is unstoppable as a tight end, or put in a flex position, he's just with him and Gronkowski. Let's just roll the dice.
And you know what's
Coming up in the dynasty and saying, "I'll hire the best lawyer I can hire for you." Plus he said, if you did this, you must have had a good reason.
right.
And I'm sorry, but RKK, no, you don't do that.
Right. He learned his lesson the hard way.
I mean, talk about an enabler. That
big time. But to give him some credit, I don't think he imagines. Well, I just look. I think it's just hard to fathom that, and I think that's it's hard for people to understand. Is I play with guys that could have the most screwed up, effed up personal life going on. You've heard stories of issues that they had. They come to work like they don't have a worry in the world. And I just never understood how guys could compartmentalize their lives like that. But there were guys that I played with that had everything falling apart in their personal lives at home, but come to work, man, you would never ever know it. And I think that's that's sociopathic. It's like on another level of understanding that I couldn't quite get down with. But I played with a lot of guys that were like that. They could just shut it off when they got to work.
Ted, go ahead. I'm sorry. Shut up, Bob.
I just want to turn the dial back a little bit. You mentioned something about your home life, and you said most people don't know a lot about this. You want to expand on that right now, or do you want to just keep it private?
Oh, yeah, no, I don't mind sharing a little bit of that, and I hope to someday actually put it out there, because there's a lot to my upbringing that people don't know, that I think some people would find pretty fascinating. I grew up in a single parent home. I have obviously two parents like everyone else. My two parents, between the two of them, have had 7 marriages. So my mom's fourth and final marriage was with my dad, and they divorced when I was very, very young. I had a mom who's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, or NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. And if you don't know anything about that, what could be a good example? You guys have you ever seen the movie Mommy Dearest?
Yes.
Okay. So the character in Mommy Dearest, that was very similar to what my mom was. My mom's her main talent was her looks. If we're being honest, she was 6 feet tall. She had movie star looks. She was a person that you walk into a room and all the heads turned, and she had power because of that. And so my mom was didn't really want to be a mom when she should have never been a mom. She was really more interested in having a good time, and really multiple affairs with with men that were very powerful. So she was attracted to the power, the men with power and the men with money. 4 marriages. She's, you find out in rehab that she was married one more time than I ever thought. I always thought she was married 3 times, but it was 4 times, and had an attraction to fighter pilots. To be honest with you, and she married 2 fighter pilots. Her husband's number 2 and 3 were both fighter pilots. And then she had an affair with a very, very high profile person for decades. I tell you what, I'll keep the name a secret, but if you've ever watched the movie The Right Stuff, okay, and you know anything about the space program, my parents moved to Houston in 1973. Obviously, NASA is based there in Houston. My mom met an astronaut who she had an affair with for 3 decades, and it was it was interesting, right? I mean, it was she had affairs with coaches of mine. She was that was her thing, and so she, for the first part of my life, was neglectful. She wanted to go party. She wanted to travel the world with these men. And then in the second part of her life, when she got older and the looks weren't taking her where she wanted, she became very enmeshed in my life. And so, and really never really let me have a relationship with my dad, who I love very, very much. I'm very close to my dad, who's a very blue collar guy. And the fact that the two married, these 2 personalities married each other is shocking, really. But so I had this very unstable home life. My mom wasn't home. My mom was away with Ben, and again with I get this high profile person. I would go on trips with him. I've met Paul Bear Bryant through him. I've flown airplanes with him when I was little, and so not your typical traditional home life. I had a very untraditional home life, and I saw things as a kid I never should have seen, and so that impacts you later in life, right? And so I've always tried to get away from my mom, from the abuse, both physically and psychologically and emotionally, and I did right after I signed my letter of intent to go to University of Colorado. So football was it saved my life in a lot of ways. Neither of my parents went to college. School was not important in my home. My mom never asked me about my grades. I barely got good enough grades just so I could play football. And my goal was to turn myself into a football player so I could get away from her and become somebody. And so that's why I owe so much to football, because I did. I got a scholarship to the University of Colorado, and about 2 weeks later, I ran away from home. And I say ran away from home, I ran away from home. I didn't drive away. I told my mom I was leaving, and I ran away, and I went and lived with my best friend for the last 5 months of my high school. And that was it. And so that was almost 30 years ago, and I've seen my mom maybe 2 or 3 times in rehab situations in the last 3 years that were really not didn't really help. If you know the borderline or the narcissistic personality disorder person and profile, you'll know that it is the hardest personality disorder to treat. And so that was my home life growing up, and so that's it in a nutshell. There's a lot of details that go along with that are unbelievable. The things she did, which the abuse in which she was, but the thing that kept me sane, you guys, is I have a great dad, a very loving father, who was, without him, I don't know where I'd be. And so I was very lucky that I had the antithesis in my dad as opposed to my mom. But of course, I was raised by my mom, who really didn't want to have me, but she didn't want my dad having me either. And so she had better lawyers because she had more money to spend, because she had really, really rich boyfriends. So that is my story, somewhat in a nutshell, guys.
Time for a book.
That's I've been talking about that. That is something I have been recently talking about, and trying to find the right partner for that is very important. So we're working on that, Mike.
Hey, let me here and just say, if you're thinking about a new vehicle, go with Lobel and Lynch. Go see our friend George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. We've been customers for years because we know that George Gray will treat you right. They're a family-owned and operated dealership that we trust and you can trust as well. So go see the big wheel, George Gray. George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. George is a big fan of Ted Johnson, big fan of the Patriots and all sports, and just I'm going over there for some service in a couple of days, and I'm just going to hang around and talk to the guys in the service area.
Well, you get your car serviced too, Mike. No
Yeah,
matter
well,
whether you need it or not.
We'll forget to do that, Bob. I promise.
Ted,
Yes, sir.
I'm in shock, actually. Thank you for sharing that story. I mean, it's hard to come up with a follow up, but I will try to. Was football worth it then? Was football worth it because of CTE? Because of when you balance it all out, it seemed to be pretty important at that time, and seems to be pretty important now. But was it worth it?
It's worth it because of where my life would have been, right? I shudder to think like what it would look like without football. It was literally the only thing that I knew I was good at, and that I could, I literally turned myself into a football player. I mean, I got a key to the high school weight room.
I remember the guns. I remember Ted Johnson guns.
What's that?
I remember the Ted Johnson guns.
Oh, you got absolutely. The biggest donation I ever made, you guys, was by far to my high school weight room. I donated a lot of money to refurbish the weight room, because that's what saved me. It was all the work I did in the weight room when I was a kid, and that was my sanctuary, and it still is. And it was because my dad, I'll never forget, he had a conversation with me one summer. I got to see my dad in the summertime for 5 weeks, and he's dropping me off to go back home, to California, to my mom. And he says to me, son, I'm not going to be able to pay for your college, and I just wanted to let you know that. And that's one of the best things my dad could have ever said to me, because that's what got my brain working on how do I get to college when I know I am not a good student. I don't get support at home for classes. I just, neither of my parents went to college. How do I get to college to then go on to do something else and make something of myself? I tell you what, I always loved to hit, and I was a tough ass kid growing up. And so I was never the best athlete, but I was tougher than most kids. And football back then more than now, toughness meant something in football. It used to be fighting in a phone booth, and it used to be, they didn't try and trick you with all these formations and plays and schemes. It was, we're going to line up, we're going to see who's better. And that's football. That was football back in the late 80s and early 90s when I played. And so I excelled at it, and I could see that I was special at this. And so I used that to get along and ahead in life. And then subsequently, I've done a ton of therapy and a ton of therapy on myself with some of the best therapists in the world. I always say I played football so I could afford my therapy bills. So I've done a lot of work on myself, and I understand why I do what I did, what my upbringing meant to me. And you got to understand, your upbringing, it shapes you, right? It shapes you, your personality and how you view the world. And I had to understand how it did, and so that I could make corrections and change how I viewed the world. And so that was Yeah, that was football, but it was all because of football. And my dad telling me he wasn't going to pay for my college. And right there, my sophomore year, I said, I got to turn myself into a football player. And I did. And I went back to training camp for the Carlsbad High School football team. And I was a tight end my freshman year. And they said, you know what? We already have enough tight ends. We need, and since you weren't here for the summer workouts because you were with your dad, you know, we need linebackers. And so I was like a 4-string linebacker. And what happened was they put me in a drill, like an Oklahoma drill, for the linebackers. And I laid this dude out so bad that I heard a sound I've never heard before. And I was a middle linebacker from that point on. And I was a middle linebacker from my sophomore year all the way to the very, very end, because one thing I could do was I could diagram plays. I was instinctive, I was tough, and I loved to hit. And that's what gave me a job for as long as I had it. It was that fearlessness, and it was really, for me, you have to understand, football was life or death. If I didn't succeed at football, what the alternative was terrifying to me, because I didn't know what else I could do or what else I was good at, and it was, or who I would be. Football was the identity that I needed to build self-esteem and to grow as a person. And without it, I'd be scared to hell to think about what it would look like. And so I owe a lot to football. The thing I say about head trauma is I always go back to the summer of 2002, when, if you've ever read my story in the New York Times, 2007, I gave my story about what happened to me when I had my former coach of the New England Patriots put me out in practice when I was in a red jersey, and the doctor said no hitting for a week. He forced me out there against doctor's orders, and you can say, well, Ted, you're a big boy. You could have said no. In 2002, nobody was talking about post-concussion syndrome. In 2002, nobody was talking about head trauma and what the repercussions could be from that. I didn't know. I just knew my head hurt, and I knew that it was wrong. But I was worried about my job, and I was just starting a family here in New England, and I had been a 7-year starter here, and I loved playing for the New England Patriots. And so I put that blue jersey on reluctantly. And then the next play, I'm in there. I hit the fullback, and if we go back to the Tua discussion, you know, the fencing position that Tua had, there's two really kind of clear visual indications that someone got really seriously hurt or got their bell wrong, got concussed, got dinged. One is obviously it's stumbling down, getting up, stumbling down. One is the fencing, but another one is, if you ever saw Luke Kuechly play in that Sunday night game where he got concussed and he couldn't stop crying, just crying uncontrollably. That is another response to trauma to the brain, is just uncontrollable crying. And that's what happened to me when I got hit that first time after I put that blue jersey on in practice reluctantly. And if I could go back in time, knowing what I know now, I never would have put that blue jersey on, and I never would have gotten that second concussion within 4 days. And that probably would have helped me in the long run, and maybe saved me a lot of troubles. But we can't go back. We can only go forward. But that would be a time in which I would have advocated for myself more strongly. But I will say this: nobody will ever have happened to them what happened to me with Bill Belichick, because it's just, there's too much information out there right now, and everybody's watching now, and it just never would happen. Bill could get away with it then, but he never could get away with something like that now.
You've been a great guest as usual, and you did a great job. I know I haven't even covered the stuff I wanted to cover, but we'll cover that next time, because we're not done with you.
You call me anytime, guys.
We're not done with you. Thank you so much, Ted.
Ted, thanks so much. It was really fantastic, and maybe I'll see you at the dentist. David Fiorello says hi. I was in his chair last week or so.
Oh, is that
same
right?
dentist. Yeah.
Oh, very good. That's my guy. I'm going there in a couple of days, so I'll
Oh.
see him in a couple of days.
Let's
That's
get, hug each other and have it and get it over with.
Michigan beat Southern Cal the other day.
Yo, God, he loves his Michigan Wolverines. Oh my gosh,
Sure does.
big time.
All right.
Our teeth look good, Mike.
They look good, yeah.
Looking good, buddy. Guys,
All right,
you're the best.
Appreciate it.
All right,
Awesome.
call anytime.
Folks, hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you follow us on unanchoredboston.com.
You got it.